Okay, so it started recording now. The recording option is on. So yeah, let us start today's Friday colloquium as usual, as has been already scheduled. 25th September is the date for Sanae Ito. Sanae Ito is from Japan, as you know from the bio note, and I will also be introducing her. Let me first thank Sanae Ito for agreeing to come over to the online dais and to share her research findings and research work with us. And I really welcome Sanae Ito to be there for us and sharing her views for maybe around, say, 30 minutes to 40 minutes. And after that, we will be having a Q&A session. And that's how the things are going on in other occasions as well. So without wasting any more time, let me first introduce Dr. Sanae Ito. Sanae Ito is a researcher at the National Institute for the Humanities and visiting associate professor at the Graduate School of Asian and African Area Studies, Kyoto University. She received her PhD in 2019, very recently, from Kyoto University for her doctoral dissertation on disaster and locality in the Kathmandu Valley. She also considers space and locality from the perspective of waste and its handling, and is the author of a 2019 article, A Polycentric Waste Management System in the Kathmandu Valley, Nepal, published in the Journal of Environmental Science and Sustainable Development. So this is in brief what Sanae Ito is right now doing, and as we can understand that she is a very fresh graduate from the Kyoto University, and we are expecting a lot from her, and particularly from a person for the first time in the Center for Himalayan Studies talking about Himalaya from a different vantage point. I mean, from the vantage point of the East, actually. So looking at Himalaya from the East, particularly from Japan, I hope would be an illuminating experience for us. So I hand over the dais to Sana for her presentation, right? Sana, please take over.
Thank you very much for introducing me. My name is Sana from Japan, and I just starting my presentation now. And I need to say sorry because I made a mistake on my abstract. Abstract shows the year of the earthquake 2005, but actually it is 2015. So it's mistake. So I will talking about the earthquake on 2015. And can you see my presentation now? Not yet?
Yeah, your PPT is visible. Please continue.
Okay. So just I start now. So title of my presentation is The Production of Locality Through Debris and Festival After Festival. And regarding aftermath of the Gorkha earthquake in the Kathmandu Valley. So on April 25th, 2015, a powerful earthquake with a magnitude of 7.8 struck east and central Nepal. The death toll was around 9,000 and more than 770,000 houses were destroyed. The earthquake left a huge amount of debris as well, which remained for months in the affected areas. P Village, a Nepal village which is the primary site of this study and located 10 kilometers southeast of Kathmandu, was severely damaged by the earthquake. 500 houses were destroyed, and debris of collapsed houses obstructed the street of the village. However, this debris was removed when a festival called Sāpāru approached. So this study attempts to explore the function of rituals and festivals in the post-disaster recovery process by focusing both on the debris generated by a disaster and a festival that prompted its disposal. Based on my case study, I show that the celebration of a specific festival called Sāpāru, or in Nepali Gai Jatra, prompted physical elimination of the debris, an ominous and extraordinary object that visually showed traces of the disaster, and that the overall process of removing the debris and celebrating the festival led to the physical and conceptual regeneration of the space in the disaster-affected area. Thus, this study suggests that the ritual, religious, and cultural practices of a community may serve that community as a means of disaster recovery and resilience. Okay, let's see about previous studies about disasters, especially focusing on debris, spaces, and festivals. Disaster destroys the spaces of people's everyday lives. Hoffman discussed that spaces with lasting effects from disasters, such as scattered debris, make people feel unsafe and insecure. Peterson discussed that the debris carried a double meaning. On the one hand, it is perceived as unclean and inauspicious because it emerged through death, rot, and destruction. On the other hand, it is a symbol of people's lives before a disaster, and hence, it is a subject of people's attachment. Debris is an ambiguous material in this respect. Disaster disrupts time as well as space, and the practices of festivals and rituals attempt to recover lost space and time. Ueda distinguished two types of time, cyclical time and linear time, in an examination of a festival held in immediate aftermath of the 2004 2.8 earthquake in Yamakoshi Village, Niigata Prefecture, Japan. Cyclical time is normal time, the time experienced in everyday situation. The natural pattern of the seasons and annual events held on specific days are examples of this normal time that progresses in a recurring spiral and in which the same cyclical pattern comes regularly, even if each year or period is not precisely the same. Conversely, Wood argued that victims of great disasters are thrown into linear time, which extends forward from the past into a future that they could not previously know what would occur next. How long will the evacuation last? When will they be able to return to retrieve their belongings? What will happen to the workplaces and farmland that they have left behind? They cannot even predict where they will be tomorrow, next week, month, or year. In the very aftermath of the disaster, people in Harfield Village returned to the cyclical time by practicing their annual festival. While living in evacuation center, people rescued bhuts from the affected village by various means, secured a bullfighting arena near the evacuation center, and held this festival, the bullfighting festival, interrupted even after the earthquake. This post-disaster resumption of the festival led to a resumption of everyday life in the cyclical time the residents have previously experienced. So this study discussed the regeneration of local spaces from disaster from a perspective of the production of locality, which Appadurai argued. The locality that continues to be produced against odds. Appadurai defined locality as a structure of feeling produced through relationship and context. Locality is unstable and fragile and easy to dissolve. Variable neighborhood in which locality is variably realized are produced substantially by local knowledge. Local knowledge is concerned with rite of passages, the building of houses, the organization of passages, and so on. So I will be talking about the Nepal society because the field village is a Nepal dominant village. Field site called P village have a population around 4,000 and the dominant caste or ethnic group is Nepals. 90% of the villages are Nepals. The P village is suburban village which is expanding rapidly. So let's see about locality in Nepal society. In the Nepal society of the Kathmandu Valley, both rituals and festivals and the special construction of cities and villages are a part of local knowledge that has produced locality. Nepals have formed cities and villages for thousands of years. The center of each city or village is defined as the most sacred place. This construction of spaces has been affirmed and enforced by festivals and rituals. Okay, so let's see the case study in P village. These photos show the very aftermath of the earthquake in P village. I will now look at festivals and locality during a disaster with this village. What happening on this village and what people do. P village was badly affected by 2015 earthquake like this photo shown. 15 people in P village were killed by the earthquake, including 3 children, and many were injured. More than 500 houses were destroyed. Almost all houses sustained damage from the earthquake, so most people in the village spent a month in agriculture field, school ground, and any open spaces. The village has 7 gates that separate the inside of the village from the outside. Here is the 7 gates showing on the map. And there are agriculture fields outside of the gates where people have produced rice and vegetables. The area inside of the gates is called the upside. The outside, including the agriculture field, is called the downside. Recently, people have built houses in downside because of a lack of space inside the village. So there are many houses in downside outside of the gates, so the area is still called downside. So the spatial structure of P village was greatly shaken by the earthquake. The upside of P village became uninhabitable in the aftermath of the earthquake. Debris of destroyed houses had blocked streets throughout the area. In this situation, rumors about supernatural beings had become widely heard. Madhav gave an account of the aftermath of the village at Belur in an interview on February 13, 2017. Residents had been living together in the tent after the earthquake. In the nighttime, P village was a dead city. There were sounds of crying in the nighttime. Many people said so, and I had heard as well. It was completely dark in P village at that time. There was no electricity. Yes, P village in the nighttime was really a dead city. There is another narrative about dangerous supernatural beings, or called bhuts. I visited Asha, who lived in P village on the evening of September 2015. There were thick curtains on all the windows of her room, which I had not seen. I have never seen before. There had always been thin curtains, and usually they were not closed. I asked her, "Why have you changed the curtains?" And she answered, "People who have lived in the arcade of the temple said, a child comes, we hear a voice and run away. After 9 p.m., there were no people outside. So I needed to close the curtain tightly. I never look outside in the nighttime." There was an opportunity to listen to a story that someone heard footsteps and voices and saw a child no one knew, even before the earthquake. Before the earthquake, such phenomena usually occurred in the downside of P village. After the earthquake, however, sighting of bhuts, supernatural beings, in upside of the village had increased drastically. Supernatural beings, usually called bhuts, in this village, wander in darkness around crossroad, agricultural field, or forest. They sometimes come into houses, though they usually hide in the darkness. The areas of P village left uninhabited in the aftermath of the earthquake became the spaces where residents reported witnessing bhuts. Madhav used the English term "a dead city" to describe the situation. Considering that a person could become a dangerous bhut if they died in an accident or in an unnatural way, this expression refers to not only a deadly silent city where nobody lived, but also a city inhabited by bhuts. The dead and the living meet at the contact zone that transgresses the everyday living world. P village became such a contact zone, tangential to the mortal world. Destroyed houses had been left as they were after the earthquake. Thus, a large amount of debris had been scattered around in P village and was blocking streets as of the end of July 2015. People called the debris remaining after segregation mato. Mato is a Nepali term that means soil and also mud. For example, one can say of an agricultural field that this field has good mato. There are many terms that indicate waste, unwanted things, or dirty material in the area. Especially juto. Juto indicates things thought of as dangerous, as they are believed to make a person impure when they are touched improperly. How are juto related to mud produced by the earthquake? Mud could be treated as a kind of juto because it is related to an earthquake that caused death and ruin. However, things indicated as being Mato were not obviously treated as Juto in Phi village. Neighbors usually considered wastage related to death as Juto that they should keep away from. Nevertheless, the residents of Phi village never referred to Mato as Juto, including Mato of houses where people died, and showed no hesitation to touch Mato after the earthquake. Mato that emerged from the earthquake had a trace of ruin. It was true that Mato was a destructive material, but it was difficult to decide whether it should be discarded, and if so, how and by whom it should be done. This is Mato in Phi village. These photos is taken on the July 2015. So both bhuts and Mato were unusual and circumscribed. They appeared in places located in the upside that had been constructed before the earthquake as safe place to live. Bhuts and Mato were dangerous to the villagers. However, these bhuts and Mato are irregularities that appeared as the result of the disaster and could not be dealt with in everyday practice. To that end, they continued to appear in the village upside for several months. Mato were removed at the beginning of August 2015. Their removal was triggered by Sāpāru, which is an annual festival for the dead who have died in the years since the previous year's celebration and constitute an important portion of the funerary rites of the Nevals. Sāpāru is a communal festival that featured not only a procession of the families of the dead, but also dances and crowns and skits. Simultaneously, Sāpāru is a means to manage this as a community. The dead are a threat not only to their families, but also to the entire people of their locality. Celebrating the festival in the community and ensuring that the dead are properly separated from the living is necessary for the safety and sustainability of both the dead themselves and the living members of the community. The procession of Sāpāru had been decided by villagers. A procession is a key part of Sāpāru. The starting point of procession differs every year. Any neighborhood, which is a starting point, prepares a feast for participants of the festival. The neighborhood members are the main conductors of the whole process of the festival. According to Phi villagers, a neighborhood that lost an important member during the previous year volunteered for the role. This regulation reflects the character of Sāpāru as collective mourning. When asked why you decided to hold the festival, a Sāpāru management staff person from the neighborhood, which overtakes the 2015 Sāpāru, responded, "Because it should be done." So with the decision by villagers, preparation of sāpāru was started. In order to hold the sāpāru, which involved a procession around the village, matto that had accumulated on the route of the procession became an obstacle that had to be eliminated by the villagers working together as a community. On August 9, 2015, cleanup of matto was started using a bulldozer and a large truck. Villagers chartered heavy vehicles to remove matto. In a narrow alley where no heavy vehicles could be placed, the villagers used a shovel and hoe to break down matto and carry it away. They touched and carried matto without any hesitation. Those who touched matto did not show the aversion they did to judo. In less than 2 weeks, the matto which had blocked every part of the road was removed. Here photos show the removal of the debris using both using the heavy vehicles and also by the hand of people. So it's a month before the Sāpāru festival, and this photo is just day before the Sāpāru festival. So the matto is here is same. This street is same street and same angle, so the old matto is removed for the procession. So the month of preparation for Sāpāru was also the time when Lake, it's a kind of devil or demon, danced around the village. A male dancer, mimicking Lake wearing a red costume and a mask, danced around the village to receive money from shops and people. The Lake dance was performed twice a week on Tuesday and Saturday prior to Sāpāru. When matto was removed and Lake began the procession, people started to gather at night to see the Lake dance. There were many people living in temporary shelters at the downside of the village without even dismantling the old houses. They have no idea when they can rebuild their houses or how to get that money to rebuild their houses. This economical and physical situation of their lives did not change with the removal of the matto or Lake dance. However, the atmosphere of the village at night time changed. Rumors of bhuts did not disappear as soon as Lake dance began. People still talking about bhuts even after the Sāpāru festival. However, when I asked about the bhuts on August 28, after the Lake dance started, Suman said that we don't have to worry about the bhuts because Lake has already come. The 2015 Sāpāru was held on August 30. People who participated in the procession gathered in the square in front of the Ganesh temple. They were wearing masks and followed by families of the deceased. The square in front of the temple was neatly cleaned up, but behind the square was still bricks and mud piled like a hill. This photo showed the left side photo showed that situation. The masked people is lining, and behind of them there is many bricks and mud there. Children dressed as a cow also wandered around the village. They were led by men dressed as cowherds. The group of men who dressed up in female clothes walked around the village as well. The route of Sāpāru was almost the usual annual route of the festival, except for a part of the route where the roads were narrow and there were many crumbling houses that could fall down at any moment. So many people enjoyed Sāpāru festival of that time, and yeah, this is dance here. So previous researches had already stated that disaster-affected people who have been thrown into linear and unpredictable world after a disaster strive to re-establish the routine of repetition by conducting an annual festival. After the disaster, in my study site, the celebration of an annual festival was desperately desired by people in the aftermath of the disaster. As the festival was celebrated, the community was reconfigured into a safer space in which to live rather than the anxious space it had become in the wake of the earthquake. The very character of Sāpāru as a means of managing villagers' relationship and interaction with the dead led to the emotional and psychological aspect to recovery, as well as the material aspect of clearing the debris left as remnant of the disaster. The debris on the streets continued to appeal to the people visually and physically about the extraordinarity and danger of the space within the village. The status of debris was ambiguous and people did not know how to deal with it. This ambiguous debris was clearly different from the juto or any other kind of wastage that emerged within the everyday life and is routinely discharged. The debris did not exactly coincide with juto, which was shunned as impure. With the debris left unattended, the space within the village also continued to be physically and psychologically unstable and dangerous. In the context of the Nepal society, supernatural beings such as bhuts had been thought to emerge outside the village and outside the houses at night. After the disaster, the bhuts had been widely witnessed owing to the blurring of boundaries. The space scattered with debris was simultaneously an ominous and dangerous space in which bhuts emerged. Mato was not explicitly linked directly to bhut or death, as it was not perceived as a judo. However, Mato was an invocation of the destruction and terror caused by the disaster, implying that the space was infested with unstable and ominous bhut. As the festival Sāpāru approached, it was decided that it would be held. Consequently, mat, which was an ambiguous object, became a thing to be discarded and an obstacle. Since Sāpāru was collectively regarded by all village residents as something that should be practiced together as a village rather than an individual activity, the festival similarly cast the work of removing Mato as the collective work for the village. Even if there is no Mato from the disaster, the people of each neighborhood collaboratively clean up the streets the day before the festival to remove any wastage there. Regardless of the types of disaster, the public aspect of the road is enhanced by making it into the site of a festival. This effect extended to Mato after the earthquake. People removing Mato for Sāpāru. There was a shared understanding that the streets that should be worked in festival were not the borderlines between the realm of the dead and the living, and hence were not zones for supernatural contact. Rather, they were ceremonial venues. This situation could be considered in the discussion of the production of locality. Appadurai states the locality is easy to deconstruct and can only survive if it continues to be produced through actions and discourses that strengthen it. If rituals and customs are not conducted, the relationship among people in the land will be broken. It is extremely difficult to regenerate the relationship once it has been deconstructed. Here in P Village, celebrating Sāpāru as a community ritual helped people return to cyclical time after a disaster. With the decision to conduct the festival, the job of clearing the debris became work which villagers had to do as a community. The removal of the Mato was positioned as part of the preparation for the festival. It articulated a group of villagers that should work collaboratively and a space for the community that should be clearing the Mato. The Mato removal was a strong visual indication to people that the space had been destroyed from the extraordinary and precarious condition brought by the disaster. In the village, in the midst of modernization and urbanization, a variety of festivals and rituals such as Sāpāru during normal times functioned as a means of the constant production of locality. However, the residents did not repeat such practices in the exact same forms as had been practiced in the past. Rather, they have been undergoing a constant state of change. Nevertheless, the festivals and rituals have served to remind people of the daily and annual cycles and draw the boundaries of the village through the procession. These routines are form of local knowledge that Appadurai mentioned. Locality continues to be produced by festivals and daily practices as local knowledge. Even when the physical boundary of privilege is made fluid by the by the earthquake. The earthquake shook the spatial areas that were already shaken by the modernization. The houses were destroyed and the road was blocked by mud. And people lived in temporary shelters built in downside of village, which was place not consciously regarded by residents as privilege in traditionally. Locality as a structure of feeling had become difficult to continue to produce owing to disaster. The boot rumors can be said to be evidence that the locality was in danger and the space in which people could attain peace of mind was destabilizing. On the other hand, boot and others could be interpreted metaphorically as appearing to demand the funerary rites performed by the living. The living were also sensitive to the appeal because they had the willingness to mourn the dead. In a psychological sense, boot played a part of the production of the locality by notifying people of the crisis and demanding a form of funeral ceremony. Sāpāru was held, and the dance of Rake circulated in response to the perceiving request to mourn by boot. The decision was made by people, villagers, and the production to held the Sāpāru. The production of locality was resumed on this point. Festivals have the power to regenerate locality from the damage caused by the disaster, not only as a conceptual but also as a physical space. The Sāpāru of 2015 was not only a guide to the afterlife for recently deceased souls, but also a driving force for the renewal of locality in both imaginary and material aspects. The case study in this study reveals that, especially in the immediate aftermath of a disaster, festivals can affect the space of the devastated area not only emotionally but also materiality. From this, it can be suggested that the religious practice can be a factor in community resilience and perhaps even disaster preparedness. That's all for my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Sana, for making your ethnographically grounded research. And yeah, it's really nice to see that how the whole question of disaster and the idea of debris could be meaningful for anthropological exploration. And this is a kind of a new genre of scholarship, which I think Nepal has seen already, because the whole experience of disaster, I mean the earthquake, happened to be created. It had created a moment of, I would say, a kind of a social scientific imagination, a different kind of imaginations which are at play. We are pretty aware of this. That is mostly starting from the works like people like who are hailing from CNAs. They are doing very much, and they are doing enough stuff on the question of disaster, earthquake, and post-earthquake social science even. And we also even got the opportunity to listen from one of our colleagues, friends out there in South Asian University. She was also having this kind of issues, that what a kind of a politics of knowledge is even going on. But anyway, so this is altogether a different story to tell, that how disaster and disaster related debris appears to be a significant passage, and that creates a significant passage in maintaining the everyday livelihood. So I think the presentation is now open for discussion and also question and observations from the participants. And as usual, I would request our colleague Binayak to take this up and deal with the Q&A section. Over to Binayak.
Thank you so much. And Sana, thank you so much. That was a really interesting presentation. We already have 2 questions coming up. The first is by our PhD student, Suma Shridi, and she asks, why do you use the term Gorkha earthquake? As in your presentation, you have taken the example of a Newar-dominated society. Do you find other instances of usage of the term, of the concept of bhut in other non-Newari dominated society in the post-earthquake disaster management in the valley?
Okay. The first question about Gorkha earthquake. Actually, it's Gorkha did not mean the ethnicity, but meaning the Jilla prefecture, which the epicenter is placing. I mean, the Gorkha is not the name of ethnic group, but the name of the place. So the meaning is this. It's yeah. I think I don't know. It answers her question, and also about the bird in non-Nepali society. Actually, I'm not sure how much a kind of the rumors of bird in non-Nepali society. I heard some, but usually I'm studying in Nepali society, so and outside of the Nepali society, I have not so many experience. So I don't know. I'm sorry. Yeah. Hey.
No, I think presentation, because the house I live in is considered to be a bit haunted. I think it transcends sort of.
Yeah. When talking about the situation, not in the disaster period, especially in 2015 earthquake period, I had so many stories about the boot from the non-Nepali societies, but especially about the earthquake or disaster-related stories about the boot, I'm not sure about that. Yeah, thank you.
Second question is by MPhil student Bhavana Pradhan, and her question is: has natural disasters like earthquakes in Nepal led to the culture of superstition, and how does the younger generation sort of take to this, and how do you think this will influence culture, society, and development in Nepal?
Yeah, thank you very much for your question.
Did you get that?
Yeah, I get that. Superstition.
Hello.
Actually, the narrative of bird, most of narrative of bird about the earthquake is narrated by young people, like 20s, 30s, or like teens. So yeah, so even the young people are talking about the rumors about the boot. But before the earthquake, some villagers, especially young guys, is really they didn't like the ghost stories in this area, so they said that I should not make the article about the ghost about the village on that time. For this article, when I asked them, then they said okay, but on that time when I'm researching about waste management, and sometimes about waste management, some ghost stories is arrived about waste management as well. Ghost stories and the god stories and the religious stories. And they said that it's really superstition things. And when you talking to this story in Japan or somewhere, then they think Nepal is how to say, underdeveloped country, underdeveloped state. It looks like so. So they don't like that kind of story. But after the earthquake, young people also talking about the boot, the sound, voices of crying voices, or the footsteps. So it's, I don't know how to say that, but they have two perspectives, I think. And so, and from my perspective, I think it's not directly influence development or society or culture, because it's all good stories. It's also part of culture and society and development in Nepal, especially in this village. Yeah.
Hello, I think, yeah, Vinayak. Yeah, please.
Okay. No, I think that's a very interesting take, because it stems from a certain sort of pre-existing idea of superstition. Now we have our dear friend Jigme from Calcutta University, who asks the role of the modern state in all of this. I mean, what is the role of the state? Didn't they try and clean the debris after the earthquake? Because from your pictures, it looks like some very heavy machinery would have, been required to remove the debris as such. And through this, if you could sort of expand on the concept of state society dynamics in the context of debris cleaning after the earthquake.
Okay, thank you very much for your question. In this presentation, I have no time to talking about this aspect, so thank you for making pointed out this point. The state, Nepali state, especially when talking about the debris in suburban areas or rural areas, Nepali state almost have they do nothing about debris, except only one day they came to this village, very 2 days, 5 days after the disaster, the earthquake, and they clean the debris somehow by their own hand. I mean, the state army came and they clean some debris, but of course, they can't manage whole village. So, and after that, they never came. So people needed to clean debris by themselves. People means the villagers. So the people raising fund through the internet to the earthquake management before the earthquake, and they collect some money, and they use most part of that money to build the contemporary shelter, but they still have some money remained. So they use that money to charter the heavy vehicles, and people also give the money like the 500 rupees or 1,000 rupees to chartering the heavy vehicles. Almost all the families of the village give the donation to that purpose. The heavy vehicle is not owned by state, but owned by the private sector. And
okay. Sanae, moving on to the next question. Sorry. Did you?
No. Please. Yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Yes. Thank you. That was a very interesting peek once again. Now we have our professor from the English department, Kritika, and she likes to know about. She really likes the way you talked about these new narrative possibilities and how you used sort of everyday Nepali words like bhut and mato, which frankly, if I can speak personally, sort of even struck a chord with me. I knew exactly what, the imageries, so to speak, of what you were talking about. But here Kritika wants to know, what does it mean then, to go back to a cyclical order of time? And does that stem from not having faith in the state mechanism to deal with the aftermath of the quake?
When I'm talking about cyclical time, I mean the cyclical time in the local level. I mean the inside of the village. In the village, people's everyday life have many like rituals and also festivals and the agriculture works in seasonally. So this year we harvesting on September. Then next they are prospected to doing same in the next year as well, harvesting. Or the festival, the Sāpāru, is coming on August again and again and again. This kind of cyclical order I'm talking about. So the state mechanism, I can't get this part properly. You mean if you mean the state, the Nepali government or the local government, then the face about that is not going back on this time, 2 or 3 months after the earthquake.
I think we can ask Kritika to.
Oh yeah. Please, yes.
Yeah, Kritika, if you want to sort of ask the question yourself and clarify, that would be helpful. If you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Oh, her mic. Okay, then. All right. Why don't you just type out what you want to say? Or can she come?
Okay. So
Yeah, she means the state Nepalese government.
it's a little bit difficult, but I think people's faith on state mechanism is anyhow not going back on that time. So I'm talking about only for cyclical order inside of the village, really local level. Yeah.
I think if I try to explain
Okay.
what Kritika was trying to make, sorry for intervening in between, is possibly the issue that is it a kind of state failure in relation to the post-earthquake phenomena? The state failure, is it opening up the space for the cyclical time to happen in a way through which Sāpāru as a festival creates its own momentary effect? So that means your position on Sāpāru vis-a-vis its relationship with the cyclical time and the state's failure in the process, is there a connect that you could see? Probably this might be, if I'm not sure whether Kritika was trying to mean this, but it sounds to me like this.
I see.
So,
I understand your point. Okay. Yes, the it's maybe the one reason is failure of state of the. I think even the state do cleaning the debris. Somehow people try to get back to cyclical time. Anyhow, I mean, even state do work, but still people in the village doing something to get back to their cyclical time. I mean, the only state work cannot solve the problem, but the one reason which show me clearly about this situation and this observation is one reason is state failure. State failure is one reason why I could see the situation more clear. Can you understand what I?
yeah,
Okay.
I think it's Kritika's question. Probably she is the best person to respond that whether it's okay or not. Yeah, I think you have the way I tried to make the problem simplified in terms to understand that what probably she might have asked. So probably you have responded to the issue. Let's see, and I definitely she will anytime respond. Might be the network is not helpful that way. So Binayak, please continue with the next one.
Okay. Now we have another question. I mean, we have a question from Jigme once again, and this is more to do with the stories, so to speak. And he wants to know whether, usually in our region, before any major earthquake or landslide, there is always this narrative about certain spirits that are crying, which sort of heralds the coming of a disaster, so to speak. Was there something like this in while you did your field work? Some kind of a premonition,
Yes.
to the disaster itself? Or?
I not in this presentation, but in my article, I referred Kawamura, who is a Japanese scholar, who is talking about. I mentioned maybe no. Kawamura talking about this issue from the case study of Japanese cases. He talking about when after some tragedy, disaster happened, the space became a contact zone, a kind of contact zone which are living and dead or living and supernatural beings met and contact. And on that time, usually dead people are coming to living and showing their feature or make living to hear their voices to offer living to make some mourning to them, special mourning. This my study is referring that study, and I agree with him somehow. This is one reason why after the disaster, that kind of spirits or ghost stories exploded. Yeah.
Okay, fine. I have a question, but I think I'll just finish the questions and then sort of ask my query. If I can, just because the theme of the next three questions seem to be quite similar.
Mm-hmm.
So if the questioners don't mind, I'm going to sort of fuse in your question, which is basically wanting. I mean, the question seems to be headed at a direction where they want to know what is the role of a community in the post sort of a disaster scenario, and how does the advent of modernization and different religious belief tend to affect the manner in which festivals and rituals are seen, especially in the context, as you mentioned, about producing locality. And was there in any way, with the creation of the concept of bhut, not the creation, but the proliferation of the ideas of bhut and being haunted, so and so, did this somehow affect the village economically or even politically, for that matter?
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for questions. For the community roles or the changing of the community, effects of the changing of the community. I think the rituals and festivals have the some role to reproduce locality. Even the modernization happening or kind of the urbanization or population growth is happening in the locality. So actually, even the P village, which is the study site, the locality, the village, is not the same, and the boundary is actually almost invisible now. Most gates are already disappeared, and also the area is expanding and expanding every year. But even though they are doing festivals every day in same period, and on that time they need to gather and doing the same festival as a community. On that time, they see the people who are doing festival, and the people who are doing festival is their local colleagues, locality. And also, when they are processing the festival, then procession route, inside of the procession route is a locality, the P village. So this kind of paradigm, this kind of the reproducing locality is still happening in P village, and this is one reason they can do the disaster management by themselves. And if the urbanization or the paradigm is shift totally, I don't know what happening in the village, but it may be more difficult to reproduce locality again, and also when they are not doing like festivals, no rituals anymore, then it is difficult for them to manage disaster effects like this way in case study. Hi. Yes. Maybe next question.
Yeah, I think there is problem from Vinayak's side because he is not in Siliguri. In Kalimpong, the things are not suitable probably in terms of questions and all. So if I am to continue with the thing, so it was with Tajirul's question that you were replying, right? Yeah, so now we have Shoshna. Shoshna is also from our Center for Himalayan Studies. So she raises a question that saying thanks to you, and she wanted to know with the advent of modernization and different religions, how they infuse in society, and what would be the paradigm shift of festival and rituals for reproducing the locality.
I think I answered this question together with Tajirul's one.
Okay, we both you.
Yeah.
Then you have Yalambar Diman. Yalambar Divan asks that his question is, yeah, Vinayak, now can you take up now?
Oh, I'm so sorry. There was light just
Yeah,
went here.
So please go ahead with Yalambar Divan's question.
Can you read it out because I just lost all my chat.
Okay. So Yalambar Divan, he asked the question that after the earthquake disaster created a new space of bhuts and other supernatural beliefs, those are being created. He wants to know how this space affected the people living in the village, maybe in economic and political sense. Right? The question is that way not very clear. Again, putting it in a way, probably what Yalambar wanted to mean, that how after a post-earthquake or post-disaster space creation in relation to the supernatural belief systems and the idea of the space, how it goes on parallelly, keeping in view the economic and political connotations of people's everyday living.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Or to put it in a way that how to use your own, conceptual frame, how both cyclical and linear time could go parallelly in a post-earthquake situation, in a post-disaster situation, where both this bhut and supernatural belief system is at work, side by side, people's everyday life processes are also at work. How in that situation production of space could get affected, and what do you think of that?
Yeah, the space effect economically, of course, the space is affected, and as when talking about politically, it's a little bit complicated because the political situation on 2015 in Nepal is really fragile one on that time. But so then people is not how to say, they didn't believe in the government or politicians or anyone. So they know they do the work by themselves usually. Of course, they go to the local government or go to the state office or calling some politicians, and sometimes they got some aid, but usually they didn't believe them, I think. And that economical and political situation is also the one reason the unstable situation after the aftermath of the earthquake in the area. Yes, I'm not sure I answered properly, but yeah, it's my answer.
Hello, Vinayak is there? Hello? I don't think so. So yeah, I think you have justifiably replied to the question being made. Continuing with the questions, I think yeah, there is probably no more question, and yeah, if there is any, then they can post their question in the chat box. And we have already discussed a lot on the issue, and I think yeah, this had been a wonderful session. If Vinayak is back, then I would also request Vinayak to put his question, as he already mentioned that he was having a question.
I have a question. It's just the
please that.
yeah, that's, or rather, the spiritual presence that's not allowing me to ask my question. But I just had a question, and it was more to do with you as a researcher and sort of the background that comes from, because with the advent of scientific objectivity and more manner in which disaster management is viewed, issues of bhuts, all of these things of haunting, etc., would be seen from a very peripheral sort of a manner, right? Now I wonder whether it is. It's a question to you. Do you think it's because of the fact that since in Japan, you all are also very sort of closely linked with the concept of spirits and haunting and etc. I mean, at least that's the idea we get from watching all your horror movies. But is it why that you sort of took this as a very central part of your inquiry? Because frankly speaking, I'm sure I speak on behalf of a lot of other people that I find this approach very fascinating, if anything.
So your question is, I'm sorry, I can't get your question.
No, I just meant whether do you think why do you think, or rather, is it because of the fact that your background sort of allows you to view see spirits and ghosts from a much more closer manner than what a Western scholar, or rather even scholars that are more trained in Western methods, would allow them to see?
Yeah. I think so. In Japan, when I went the field village after the disaster, 3 months after the disaster, I heard so many stories about the bird and the ghost, and even not only in the field village, but in the Kathmandu Valley, there are many kind of the good stories. And when I heard that stories, I reminded that the stories of the ghost stories after the 2011 the Great East Japan earthquake and the tsunami. After the tsunami, in the area of Tohoku area in Japan, there were so many rumors about the ghost. Even in the newspapers, sometimes taking that news, and also many articles Japanese scholars, especially sociologists and anthropologists, are researching the disaster, tsunami disaster, talking about that ghost stories and ghost. So yeah, so my background is somehow related to this account or this idea, I think. But one reason is people are talking about ghost stories aftermath of the earthquake in this village. It's one reason. So I think this is a kind of special phenomena aftermath of the earthquake. Yeah, so there are two reasons, but one reason is I'm Japanese. So
Okay. We can. This is one more question that just came in. We wanted to know whether, and this is probably what I meant, that are NGOs playing a role in sort of educating people about the super about the problems in believing supernatural remedies to their current problems.
okay, first question about energy earths. Wait, energy earths. It's difficult to say, but I don't think NGOs who want who are denied the supernatural power. I don't think that the kind of energy odds which denies the supernatural power could save the people in the disaster affected areas. Supernatural power, of course, it may not directly save people. I mean, the supernatural beings or gods or someone cannot save directly, may not save directly the victims, but still people, for people who are believing such as supernatural beings, it have some meaning. So I don't think NGOs who wants people apart from that kind of beliefs cannot save them. I mean, the NGOs have another work, but that kind of awareness is not save them, save victims.
Okay, thank you so much. I wonder whether it's such a bad thing to believe in these kind of things. I'm not sure whether you can just call them sort of superstitious beliefs. I think they serve a purpose, in my opinion. I'm not sure whether they need to be seen as something, or believing in stuff like this needs to be seen in something, as, in a very negative way. Anyhow, I don't think we have any more questions. So thank you so much, Sana, and now I hand over the thing to Satyada again.
Okay, thank you, Vinayak, and yeah, for coming almost at the end of the discussion. Mine is also not a question as such. I also have something to share. Thanks, obviously, for this wonderful presentation and in a way, a kind of a bottom-up approach towards looking at disaster vis-a-vis the social reality in which the cultural ways of dealing with disaster that had been framed in post-earthquake Nepal. I was just wondering that you have used at one point of your discussion debris as unclean, right? So that is what I was wondering, that if this unclean, because and I'm sure that you know this, because in context like ours, the word unclean is something very significant. I mean, in terms of, if you see it in terms of purity, pollution, relationship, as also caste questions. So I was not very sure that whether your use of debris as unclean is having that significance or not. And if it is so, then is it like that this debris being unclean is having, or that makes the passage clear to it that it could have a space in the, I mean, the linear time that you have formulated. Linear time meaning a kind of continuation from the past and towards a unknown future. So unclean, debris, linkage with Bhut, and what else? Lakhe, the festivals like Lakhe, and the passage towards a linear time. Is it like that, the argument that you tried to build up? That's what I was just trying to make it sure that, yeah, if it is like that, we can follow your argumentation in that path or not. Please, if you can.
Thank you very much for your clarification. Yeah, unclean. The debris is some scholars said debris. The victims sees debris as unclean, and I thought so, but after I entered the field site, I'm not sure. I was not sure it's unclean or not. People never use the word judo. It means unclean or impure in this study area, and people never used that word towards the debris. But still, there were many good stories, and there were many unstable situations there, and so I thought that I can say that the debris in this village shows the unstable situation as visually, but I can't say directly that it's connected to Bhut or a dead person or the uncleanness from the death. But still, it is one reason that my argument. It is one part of my argument that the linear time, which is unstable and insecure, and the linear time. So yeah, this is my argument. So Matu and Bhut both shows the unstable situation. Both is a kind of symbol of the unstable situation of the very aftermath of the earthquake, and linear time, which the victims should had to live. And because of Sāpāru, the situation is changed, and again the debris shows that change visibly. So yeah, so this is my argument.
Okay. Thank you, Sana, for your reply and making your position clear on the issue that I raised. And yeah, and one simple thing. Well, this is just my wild guess. It's not a question as such. I was just wondering that you were using almost many a time that your study area was in a field side, which was probably a village P kind of a thing. Or the photographs that you were sharing, that we were just wondering that every time there was multiple, buildings having multi-storied buildings, I mean to say, though they were being affected. But I was just wondering that a village, or is it a kind of a urban complex? That's what the field site was being located.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah,
Locality.
Yeah, one look. I mean it's called village, but actually it's urbanizing. It's urbanizing now. I mean the urbanization is happening in this village. So it's a kind of suburban area of Kathmandu metropolitan city now, but still people call that place village. And also the second reason of the multi-street buildings. Multi-street buildings is a traditional style of Nepal buildings. So even in village areas in Nepal, they have the same style buildings, like three floors or 4 floors. So both is reason that it looks like not a kind of rural situation.
Okay. Thank you. Got it. That it had been a suburban area nearby to Kathmandu main city space. Yeah, I think there is no question anymore as such. So from the part of the department, I mean the Center for Himalayan Studies, and all my colleagues out there, and all students who have been participating in these kind of lectures, and on behalf of all of them, I thank you to come over on this dais and sharing your views and agreeing to be with us for more than an hour. And we have really enjoyed, and this had been a very engaging discussion floor that had been created out of your presentation. And thank you again for coming up, and we will solicit your engagement in future as well. And I have been seeing that you are also engaging with our sessions as well. In previous all 3 sessions you were there. So that's a great thing that you also keep interest in whatever we are doing. So, and also on behalf of the department, I would also like to thank your supervisor for turning over to this discussion, and also another friend, another colleague might be that I don't know, the name is not there, from Japan probably. He or she might have also joined. I thank also him or her as well from the part of the center. Yeah, so let us say goodbye. Bye-bye. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you very much.
Okay. So see you anytime.
Thank you,
soon.
Sanae.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Right. Okay then. Bye-bye. I'm just getting out of the session, right?
Yes.
Okay.